Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph V. Roberts, and in studio with me this evening is a phenomenal woman that I had the pleasure of recently connecting with across social media lines. She is a resilient leader, mental health coach, the host of the WOVE Inspiration Radio. And if you don't know, Women of Vision and Excellence is what that means. It's dedicated to empowering others through faith, gospel music, and stories of transformation. So we definitely have a true woman of God before us today who's taking time out of a very busy schedule to hang out with us for a little while to share a little bit of her journey, a little bit of her story, with the hopes of inspiring, encouraging, and uplifting others, especially as it pertains to dealing with the challenges and storms of life that we all go through in some fashion or form. So, with that said, it's my privilege and honor, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you our special guest this evening, Miss Althea Richardson. Althea, thank you so much for being on the show.
Joseph, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure and honor.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we jump into our segments this evening, I do want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do. Kind of give our audience a snippet of who is Althea Richardson.
Thank you. And my name is Althea Richardson. I have been living in San Antonio, Texas for about 5 years now, and living in Texas overall for well over 20 something years by way of Dover, Delaware. I have two young adult children that live with me and very busy in the industry of a pregnancy center. I'm the clinic director there, as well as a radio host. So I've been in the industry of radio for now 6 months, but I've been
Wow.
in the podcasting industry for well over 7, 8 years now.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So when I grow up, I want to be like you. You're doing your thing. So, uh, so yes, I clearly you have your you wear many hats, but doing some phenomenal work. And when I had an opportunity to come across your profile, I don't believe that God makes these connections by accident. And so I saw what you were doing. I thought you would absolutely be a perfect fit for our show, and I'm so thankful that you decided to accept the invitation. So. I'm not going to do too much talking right now because I want to jump in and learn a little bit more about you and your story. So, with that said, out the as is the case with everybody that I bring on the show, when we're getting into this conversation about your journey and about your story, I really like to take a few moments of our time to reflect back on where it all starts. I truly believe that the foundation of one's story, of one's journey, in order for you to fully understand it, in order for you to fully grasp the full lessons of it, that we have to take a moment to go back, even as far as childhood, because a lot of times people that you meet, encounters that you have, experiences that you go through, while it may not make a lot of sense at the time that you're dealing with it, as you get, some years behind your belt over time, and you begin to understand a little bit more, get more clarity as to what exactly is my purpose in life. You start to think back to those moments, and now all of a sudden the light bulbs are coming on, and you're beginning to connect the dots and understanding, oh, this is why I had to go through what I went through. This is why I met this person in the moment of time that I went through it. I might have been complaining or fussing about what was going on, but not knowing that God was weaving all of this thing together in order to get me to where I am today. So, with that said, if you would take us back to the beginnings, and share with us what was it like for you growing up, fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as if there's any particular challenges that come to mind, you can share that as well. Kind of give us a foundation, backdrop, if you will, of where your story begins.
Absolutely. I was a base brat. So I traveled all over different parts of the United States with my dad, who was in the Air Force. Our last stop was New York City, where because my dad had ended up going to Korea for about a year and a half. And during the time that we were staying with my grandparents, unfortunately, my mother and grandmother didn't get along. So we end up moving from there to uncle's house. And I'm not sure as to how long that we stayed there because I was about 5 years old when we moved there. And unfortunately, during the time that I was there, a family member decided to come into the room that we were staying in and he molested me. So at the age of 5, I was molested by a family member. My mom, mother didn't know anything about it until actually many years later when I was a young adult. But that was one thing, the major thing that changed my life completely. Because as I've told other people, that is like a seed that's planted in someone that then grows into something monstrous, and decision making and things going forward really affected my decision making, and also my relationships, and all of the people that I came in contact with. And so going forward, I'm looking for love in all the wrong places. I'm doing things that most women shouldn't be doing. And we're grown, we're adults here, and so there were times that I would be in back of cars and hanging out with guys that I shouldn't be hanging out with, because again, I was looking for love in all the wrong places, and also just looking for love in general because of the initial seed that was planted going forward in my life. So something like that can really cause someone to make crazy decisions. And I know, later on I'll be able to go even deeper about some of the decisions that I had made that it took until actually 20, or I would say actually until I was 54, when I was able to actually overcome that decision that I made, and God was able to forgive me for the things that I chose to do. So yeah.
Mm, mm. Wow. Well, let me first start off by saying I appreciate your transparency and your, your vulnerability in sharing that. Even after all of these years later, I can only imagine that it's not necessarily, easier to go back and reflect on that. But at the same time, as we started off the show, even moments that are traumatic, that are game changing in some ways, in a negative way, you have to take a moment to wonder, well, why would God let this happen? Why would he allow me to go through this? And immediately, as you were talking, I'm thinking to myself, about what it is that you do today, and what your vision is. And I'm thinking, this is part of it. This is part of that journey, because in order for you, as is stated by the naming of your radio show, in order for you to be about women of vision, and being a mental health coach, and just tapping into, the concept of empowering and encouraging people, don't just naturally have the gift of just knowing how to put smiles on people's faces, and perk them up. Oftentimes behind all of that is a story of
Yes.
a time when all the bright smile and the cheer and the uplifting words just weren't there, because there was some pain that was going on inside. And as you so eloquently put, you're talking about decades of an experience from childhood that you still find yourself healing from, processing through, to just get to the point that you are today. So again, these things don't happen by accident. It's unfortunate that it happened, but when you understand what it means to be in a relationship with God and how He moves, it allows you to see it from a different perspective, in terms of, yes, this is unfortunate, but I know God loves me unconditionally. I know that He sees the big picture even when I don't. So there must be something, there must be some purpose, if you will, in this pain. And if you think about it, if you look, I don't know if you paid attention to our a title for our show this evening. God has the plan, and if we're
Right.
keeping it real, we don't always know what that plan is. It
Truth.
doesn't always make sense, but who are we to question it, in the sense of knowing that He is all knowing, all, has wisdom beyond any of us, it's not even in comparison. So, when you look at it from that perspective, again, it allows you to process even the painful moments a little bit differently than you would if you were just simply in 100% victim mode. Why me? Why? Because all you have to do is reflect back on, just Jesus Himself.
Yes,
Can
exactly.
we really, if we really think about it, even in our worst moments of life, when you compare what He went through, it's almost like, do I really have a whole lot to be, this angry or this frustrated
Right.
about, like, as if, in other words, to my listeners, I don't want to downplay that experience. I've had numerous guests come on the show, both men and women, who have dealt with the very thing that you're talking about. It's a very serious thing, and I don't in any way want to suggest that I'm watering it down or
Sure.
saying, oh, it's no big deal or anything like that, because it absolutely is. But nevertheless, it's one of those things that, again, as traumatic as it can be, we just serve a God that can take even the darkest of seasons in our lives, and He can transform them into something much more powerful. That, again, as a 5-year-old girl, you didn't see any of that, but
Not at
then
all.
here you are today, and it's beginning to manifest itself, along, I'm sure, with other experiences and encounters that you've had along the way to kind of piece it all together, which is why I like to have this moment in kind of getting the foundational basis, if you will, of your journey, of your story. So
Sure.
again, appreciate you sharing that. So, Althea, as you know, again, we go through our times coming up as a kid. Some good, some trying, some some are just unforgettable in many ways. But you live long enough, you venture off into adulthood, and things don't change. There's more experiences, there's more opportunities to encounter people and circumstances and situations. But again, as you live, as you put some years on your track record, if you will, there's going to come a point in time when you get hit with a situation that's a little bit different than the normal trials or tribulations of life. You get hit with a storm that, it's one of those moments where you don't see a way out of this. You don't see a way through. This is not something that my money can fix. This is not something that I can call in a favor to fix. This is not something that I can run or hide from. It's me in this storm, and I don't know what to do with it. It's heavy. It's making me feel helpless, hopeless in so many ways, and questioning. Have I been abandoned? Have I been forgotten about? All of those thought processes are going on inside of you. So, with that said, tell us about a time that's exactly how you felt, that you found yourself facing a storm of life that seemed insurmountable. You didn't know what to do with that thing. It was just, but nevertheless, it was just you and this storm, and you had to figure out something. But again, you didn't know in that moment what to do. But by the grace of God, things were able to navigate and work itself out. And you're here today to even be able to share the story. So we know something wonderful happened out of it, and we know who's responsible for it. So, with that
Absolutely.
said, tell us what that experience was like for you, and what was ultimately the turning point when you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel and coming out of that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to fast forward to a time when I was married. I was married for 2 years. And unfortunately, by the state, I was married for 2 years, but technically, um, at least 6 months because the my first husband, he had a drug addiction and everything. Believed God that God would deliver him, that he would save him, that he would set him free. He went in and out of rehab, but it seemed like I was the one that was really trying to hold on to the marriage, but God was like, you might want to let this one go. But see, I didn't want to be a part of a statistic. I didn't want to be a part of the generation of that my mother, she had been married a couple of times as well. I didn't want to fall into that category again. And yet here I was trying to hold on to a marriage that really, I mean, if we're gonna be honest, it really wasn't a whole marriage at all because he didn't stay home long enough to be a husband and everything, being out on the streets, addicted to drugs. So there came a time where God said, "You have to let him go." And as painful as it was, I relented. And it was on the day that, the divorce was finalized. The, judge, hit the gavel on the, table and said, "Okay, everything is done." There was no property or anything like that, so, um, my friend who, had, driven me to the courthouse, she wanted to go and celebrate, "No, this is divorce," and blah, 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 and everything, and I'm like, I was not in the mindset at all. I mean, understood what she was trying to do, but at that time, that was not a celebration that I wanted to have. This was actually a low point in my life because all of the relationships that I had gone through pretty much ended the same way. It was disappointment, it was hurt, it was pain, all of that. And then having thought that, okay, I'm married now and things are going to change, and it still ends up being the same way. Yeah, that was the nail in the coffin for me. So on that day, I went home, and if you remember the 8 CD changers, the carousel of CDs that you can put in there and you play a variety of music and everything. And on that day, I had a lot of gospel music that was playing at that time, or it was in the console. And what I did is I said, you know what, God, I really need you to minister to my soul. And music has always been a variety of music has always been my thing anyway. But on this particular day, I really needed to hear from God. I really needed for him to minister to me in a way that would heal my soul, heal my very being. And so I turned on this console, and I kid you not, it had to been about a good 2 hours that the words, every single solitary CD that played just ministered to my spirit. And so needless to say, I'm snotting and crying, hair all over the place, and I mean, just looking crazy. If there was a camera looking at me, it would have been like, "What is going on with this lady?" But that was my turning point. That was my breaking, and God said, "Now I need you to get up, wash your face, and go forward in the things that I have you to do. There is a lot of things that I have for you to do, but you had to be broken down in order for you to go forward and get back up and do what I want you to do." That was the day that Wove Inspiration started. That was the turning point for me, in that I wanted to go forward and start helping other women that were broken, that had experienced all of the things, anything from a divorce to maybe sexual molestation to an abortion to miscarriage, all of the things. I've been there, done that, got a t-shirt and a whole shop to go with that. And that was the day that the women's ministry Wove was birthed.
Wow, wow. Again, thank you for your transparency and sharing that. And as you were doing so, I couldn't help but go back to, the title of our show this evening. God has the plan. Um, you spent years, like you said, in and out of relationships that, looking for love, hoping for a better outcome, but every time it kept repeating the same thing, the same disappointment, different face, but same disappointment in the end. And it's like, after a while, and I can relate to that to a certain degree, just from other personal experiences that I've had. But it's like you kind of repeat this cycle over and over again, and after a while, it becomes hard to stop, blaming the other people who let us down, and you have to start, having a self check moment where you go, is it something that I'm missing here? Is there some disconnect? I think I'm a good
Right,
person. I'm trying to give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm trying to be a loving, caring, thoughtful individual, not judge people because they got some challenges or things like that. But in the end, I'm the one that keeps getting burned. And what happens is, and is what this is one of those moments of, if you know, you know,
right.
you eventually get to this point where, it's just like the light bulb comes on, and it's usually the light bulb moment usually comes on when you're at that rock bottom moment.
Mhm.
But at the same time, right before you're about to just check out, so to speak, God's presence is always been there, but it's felt
Yeah.
a little bit different than before. And really, what God has been doing all along is He's been trying to give you the pathway to navigate in a different direction. But as you stated, you know, We get relentless, we get stubborn, we get set in our ways, and we're gonna fix ourselves. We're gonna fix, and we get into, like I said, in this case, we get into relationships, and even if, though we get the signs right out the gate that this is not where
Right.
we're supposed to be, but we put on our capes. We put on our, my mom used to jokingly, she was one of those joking but serious moments. She used to be like, you try to play Captain Saver, you trying to go in and fix them
Right.
and make them be what they need to be.
Yeah.
You going whatever they went through. I'm gonna clean them up, like you talked about your ex husband. I'm gonna clean him up. He's gonna get right, and we're not gonna be the statistic. We're worried about what people are gonna think, what they're gonna say,
That part.
combined with the fact that because of the hurt that we all or that's going on inside of us, it's the hurt of loneliness. I don't want to be by myself. And
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who just truly just loves to be by themselves. I mean, there's some, but most people, and I think it's a natural thing that God builds into us to not
Yes.
be alone. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we don't want to pursue that at the cost of sacrificing our self-worth, our value, um, settling, the absence of boundaries, the tolerance for disrespect or mistreatment of some sort or things of that nature. I do believe, as you have put, identified earlier, that that seed was planted as a
Mhm.
small child, because this is somebody, this family member stole your innocence, and it,
True.
it, it confused it, it clouded it, and so it just had you on had you on this path of just kind of wandering, hoping to figure it out. And God is all along saying, okay, I know you're trying to figure it out, but I need you to find me instead of trying to find the one. I am the one. I need you to
Yes.
connect with me, because I got this all laid out for you if you just come this way. And so when you finally got to that moment, where you just say, you know what, let me just throw on some music, because this is something that usually kind of perks me up. It's not by accident that even in and I was visually, we both telling our ages. We talked about that carousel of CDs, but it's
Yeah.
like, it's something about the fact that you didn't just put on some songs, just by choice and hoping that something good would come out of it. You said specifically, you for the first time, you actually said, you cried out for help. And in this scenario, you cried out for help by saying, God, let this music speak to me. And for you to say, I go for the next 2 hours. If you figure the average song is 5 to 6
Right.
6 minutes, and you listened for 2 straight hours, and every song wasn't just you bopping your snapping your fingers and bopping your head, but that every song spoke to you. That's not by accident. That is
Uh,
God saying, I've been wanting to have this conversation with you for some time now, and we got a lot to talk about.
Amen.
And through music, which is a way that God can speak to you through music, He not only soothed you, He not only comforted you, He not only calmed you, but He imparted in you, this is what I created you for. This is the purpose. So I need you to go, like you said, I need you to go wipe your face, straighten your hair, pull it together,
Yeah.
and now get ready to go to work, because
Yeah.
this is what I created you for. Part of your journey, part of what you went through was a key component to you
Mhm.
getting to this point. Now, God may not have meant for you to have to go through it as long as you did to get to this point, which, because
Right.
sometimes, and that's where the self accountability kicks in. We have to sometimes take ownership, like, you know what, we could have probably been here or should have been here long time ago, but we lose our way. We want to navigate our own path instead of listening to Him. And as you know, every time we listen to Him, it always works out. When we
Amen.
try to tweak it, modify it, or just flat out ignore it, that's when we run ourselves into situations that we probably could have otherwise avoided, or even if it was a stormy moment. Because again,
Mhm.
God will allow you to go through stormy moments, but sometimes when we get off path, we end up staying in the storm longer than we had to.
Truth.
So
Right. Exactly.
but in the end, I think it's a powerful testimony that, considering all that you went through and through life to get to this point of realization that God is very real, and He's able to, again, make that way, make that path when it doesn't seem like there's a way for it. That's why we go back to the title. He has the plan. He always
Amen.
has the plan. We just have to be open to receive it. And part of that process, and I want our listeners to understand this, is part of that process does involve sometimes just allowing yourself to be vulnerable and say, I can't carry this no more. I can't do this by myself. That's typically a big turning point for us all when we finally say, I just can't do it. And it's okay if you can't do it.
It is okay.
God didn't create us to be weak, but he also didn't create us to have it all figured out either. Because if we had it all figured out, if we knew it all, then we wouldn't there would be no need for him. There had to be something, some gap in between that we would call upon him, and he could not only fill that gap, but then he could take it to levels that is beyond our imagination, which is exactly what he's doing in the vision that he's placed on your heart. And the last thing I want to say about that is even when you go through this cycle of storm and trauma and things of that nature, the way God orchestrates how the story concludes is always interesting, because if you wrote it, it's supposed to be, and then I lived happily ever after, and I found my Prince Charming, and we rode off into the sunset. And that's not to say that there isn't somebody out there that he can't connect you with, for if you've ever been in that kind of situation, for my listeners. But a lot of times he'll take the very thing that brought you down to your lowest point and say, what I want you to do now is go help other people that are going through what you've been through. You've experienced it. You sought me. I gave you the blueprint on how to overcome it. Now I want you to go out and help somebody else.
Amen.
And that's powerful in itself, for you to take the darkest times of your life. And now, Lord, you putting me to work to take the darkest, and for me to repeat this over and over again and share it with perfect strangers and be vulnerable about my stuff, so I can do what? Yes, so you can help them, because there's some people out there that you haven't even met yet, and they going through it even harder than you are. But
Right.
I've equipped you to pour into them, and you can do this. You know why? Because I'm with you. That's why you can do it. And so that's kind of how that journey process goes. And they always say, if try to come up with your own plan, try to come up with what you think you want to do, and watch God just basically chuckle at that and say,
Yeah,
and give you
for real.
something totally to the left. And you could tell me if I'm wrong about this. I mean, did you ever imagine doing ministry at this level, or having a radio show and doing things like this and speaking
Yeah,
on
I know.
the, it's uh,
Yeah, I wish that I could say, because you had mentioned that, some people end up being, with someone in the Prince Charming thing, and a happily ever after, but, unfortunately, that in that case, for me, was not the case. I did remarry, maybe about 2, 3 months later after all of that took place, and, the man that I had married, phenomenal man of God. He was a musician. He was also a producer and everything. And how we connected was because of the love of music and that I had as well. And I wanted to take it a step further by being in someone that promoted artists and everything. And so we were married for 18 years and learned a whole lot about the music industry, the music business, the background things that go on in the music industry. Probably a little bit too much about that part, but unfortunately, 18 years later, in 2019, my then second husband had passed away. Now, what's different about my experience with him is that he loved me unconditionally. We loved each other. We had two children together and everything. We had a phenomenal time together. There was a time that, though, unfortunately, there were some things that he was struggling with mentally that kind of brought him to a point where he was getting tired, and so his health was going down and everything, and he had passed away from a heart attack. Now, prior to that, and what's significant about that is that it took place after the day after my birthday. So
Hmm.
these are things that, of course, I have to remember every single year, but God had prepared me way ahead of time. for what was going to take place in his life after he had passed away. God had prepared me. He had given me peace that surpasses all understanding to prepare my heart for this. And God said, He said He would never leave nor forsake us. And that is a true statement. He walked alongside me throughout that whole process as well. And so that also gave me the ability to help my children go through the process also, and that's the reason why we had to get a change of scenery. And so when we moved from Houston to San Antonio, that's when the next level for me took place. And the rest right now, I could truly say is history, because when we moved here to San Antonio, it was a whole different ball game, a whole different level for me. And now I am doing exactly the things that God wanted me to do, having gone through all of the things that I went through, and the
Mhm.
key word being through, which means that it was only temporary. It may have seemed like it was a long process, and I had to go through all of that stuff, but there was a reason. And the my favorite scripture is Romans 8:28, which says that all things work together for the good of them that love God and who are the called according to his purpose. And all of the things, whether they were good or bad, they had to take place in order for me to do what I
Mhm.
do today.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's a perfect scripture that uh, reference here. About being called. When you're called to purpose, whatever that purpose is, um, that part of that journey again does involve some bumps along the way. It does involve some pitfalls along the way. But again, it's about your spiritual development. You have to. I always like to kind of refer to it as sort of like your spiritual workout that you have to go through. Um, anybody, and I'm not a when I in the physical sense, I'm not one who loves to go to the gym and lift weights and all that. That's exhausting. That's tired. And the same impact can happen to you spiritually, and it can
True.
get exhausting. The mental, the emotional of it can get exhausting. But if you equate it to again the parallel of what it looks like when people work out and do their thing, how the body changes and transforms, etc., the same thing happens spiritually. It's almost like when you think about the Bible speaking about when you're going through your trials and your storms, we count it all joy. And so for somebody who doesn't understand the concept of that, it's like, well, why would I celebrate um difficult times? Why would I embrace tragedy and think, what kind of person thinks like that? And it's not, when we speak to that, it's not so much that we're saying that we love to go through difficult and hard times. Nobody nobody enjoys that, but it's more
Right.
about you understanding why it's necessary. And again, when you understand the why to it, back to the scripture you just quoted, there's the peace that
Yes.
allows you still have your human moment where it frustrates you, maybe makes you cry, makes you want to scream. You still have that, but you don't stay stuck in that. You're able to kind of pull it together and say, okay, Lord, I know this doesn't feel right. I'm not sure where you're going with this, but I trust you. I know you have a plan. You've shown me that over and over again in all the other scenarios that I've been in. So I shouldn't think that this is going to be any different in this case. So what are we doing with this? Where are we going with this?
Hey, right.
And so it's one of those things that again, when you're called, you should expect to go through some stuff. It's just it comes with the program, but you should also expect to be able to come out okay on the other side of it. That you're going to still be
Exactly.
standing upright, and in fact, that you'll be stronger, better, and wiser than what you were before that storm even began. And then the other thing I wanted to point out, which I had a similar experience as you did, and so it I was able to personalize it, was the fact that you had that moment where it was time to get a new scenery.
Yeah.
Um, part of the journey of life when when you're walking in the purpose that God has for you, there are going to be times when he just says, "Hey, all right, what you just went through, okay, we're done with that. It is now time for you to go on to the next level, to the next chapter, and that next chapter will sometimes, oftentimes, will require a physical move to a foreign land that you know nothing about. Nobody there. Maybe there may not be anybody there that you know in terms of friends or family. It may be a place that's completely off the radar of anywhere that you ever thought you would go to live. But God is saying, I have work for you to do, and in your case, it's in San Antonio. So pack up your stuff, go out there. I know you don't know what's what I'm supposed to be,
Right.
expecting or whatever, but I just need you to go there and I'll give you further instructions upon your arrival. And you just kind of have to ride on that faith and trust that this is what you have from me. This is the move that you want me to make. And like I said, as crazy as it sounds, a lot of times it's such a big move is followed by you coming out of a traumatic, stormy moment. In this case, it was again passing of your husband. That's a big deal. When I made my big move to Texas, it followed the passing of my mom.
Mm,
So it was like, and and even to that, a lot of times, even though the event itself was traumatic, a lot of times the actual move was something that God had already been talking to you about even before the
yeah.
tragic moment happened. He's been in his own way giving you cues that you this is not where I know you love it here, but this is not really where you're supposed to be. Um, and yeah, and again, we get into those moments where we talk ourselves out of it. No, I'm never leaving here. This is where we gonna always be. And sometimes he has to, whatever that thing is, whether it's a thing, a person, a situation. Sometimes he has to make a move, a shift in your life that has you looking at it a little bit different and saying, okay, you ready to go now? Is this
Yeah. For
are
real.
you still confused? Are you still in doubt? Just because you're resisting doesn't mean that you're not going to go. It's
Right.
just, it's just how do you want to make this happen? Do you know? And that's not to say that he punished you in any way by allowing your spouse to pass or punish me and allow my mom to pass. I often tell people that while I consider that to be the most traumatic moment in my life, it was also one of the greatest blessings in my life because it led me to somewhere that I wasn't trying to go. But fast forwarding these years later, I needed to be here because there were some things that was designed specifically for me. And if I didn't move, if I didn't operate out of obedience, I would have never been able to experience it. This moment would never even been here, even though I wasn't thinking about it when I moved here. Your moment would have never been where it was in San Antonio, but years ago,
Right.
it wasn't even on the radar. So how does that
Yes.
happen? And the answer to that is because God had it all in His plan. It was all laid out. He was just waiting for us to be obedient and walking into that. And once we were, then we were able to realize the blessings that He was trying to get us to all
Right.
along, as well as the training, if you will, the development, if you will, that He was trying to impart in us, so we could be a blessing to other people. So
Yeah.
that's the way
Exactly.
I see it. And I think that
That's
that's kind of
that's spot
how he
on.
works.
Spot on.
So you know, it's just how God moves, and it's a wonderful thing. So,
And
to our listeners, that's why we're spending the time that we are spending on this, so you can see how this all manifests and comes together. So, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were ready to say something?
no, I totally agree. He does put us in positions where we get uncomfortable in our current state, literally
Mm-hmm.
in our current state, and it's like, okay, I need to make some decisions. At the time when I was in living in Houston and everything, there was a whole lot of stuff that was going on in Houston. Traffic, for one, was really getting on my nerves. They were constantly building and new roads and everything, and then there was just a lot of things that were going on in our neighborhood that we were living in. And the main reason is because when my husband had passed away, it was in our home, and so I made every attempt to try to find another place for us to move in Houston and everything, and those doors just never opened. And so it was during COVID, well, just before the shutdown in March, that we decided to take a trip to San Antonio. I do have a brother, and my dad live here in San Antonio. Decided to, go ahead and just get away. Let's just do something
Hmm.
different and everything. And then it was on that weekend where I made the decision. It's like, you know what? This is a little bit more slower. There's not so much traffic. The people are kind of friendly,
Hmm.
and so it was in August of 2020 during COVID where we decided to go ahead and move. And like I said, going forward, it has been um, the most blessed time. And it's what's even more interesting is that when I was looking for a place to live, had no idea where I wanted to go. I didn't know the area of San Antonio as far as what side is good and what side is bad. But I came across a apartment complex that hadn't been open for maybe 3 months or so, and said, "Okay, I'll go ahead." And I didn't want to move into another apartment, but I did. And long story short, it ended up being the name of the apartment was Esperanza, and I later found out that Esperanza means hope. I said, "God, you are so awesome."
Mm.
You are so awesome. He is very strategic in the things that he does. As long as we are obedient to him, as long as we take the steps that we need to go forward, the doors will open. And so since I've been here, as long as I keep walking forward, every time I take a step, the doors open. And it has been a phenomenal journey. And I love my life. I love my life.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And again, you gave me another relatable moment. It made me think about when I relocated to Texas. Uh, the house that we ended up renting when we first moved here in the Dallas area. The community was called Village Park, and why that was so compelling to us was that when because I grew up in Chicago, when my mom got married, I was still living at home. I was just got out of grad school, and I decided to relocate with my mom to Indianapolis at the time. And the apartment community that we lived in, that we first moved in when we went to Indianapolis, was called Village Park. And for my mom, that was a turning point for her because she was just getting married, and my grandmother passed away a couple of months later. So it was time for her to make a move, new job, new city, new life with her husband, and moving into Village Park. And then here I was many years later. My mom passes. I come to Texas, new job, new opportunity, and we move into a place that's called Village Park. So I say all that to say I wasn't looking for that, obviously. It was just,
Truth.
but again, when you understand how God moves, you stop saying luck, you stop saying coincidence,
Right.
and you start replacing those words with, that was divine design. That was that was
Yes.
God orchestrated. You start looking at it different. You moving in the complex that you moved in, and just even you taking the opportunity to figure out what the name of the complex meant.
Yeah.
And for you, it instantly connected. What, this isn't a situation where you were reaching for something, reaching for a message. The message was plain. It was in your face. You were supposed to go to the city where you were in. You're supposed to go to that complex, a place that you just said, I didn't want to move into an apartment again, but I
Right.
did. But you needed to be in a place of hope. You needed to be in a place, a city that was a little bit calmed down, a little bit slow moving, so you could have time to reflect, to relax, to reset, so that you could again get locked in and focused on the whole reason why God brought you there to, to take on this next phase of life, which, as you shared, clearly has been the best decision that you could have made. I
Absolutely.
love my life. I love what I'm doing. You clearly have no regrets about the move. So again, these things are not by accident. And it all goes back to a beginning, a 5-year old girl whose innocence is taken, transforming all these decades later to get her to here, a place of hope. When she once upon a time felt hopeless, she now has hope. And she not only has hope, but she's inspiring that same hope that she's experiencing and imparting it in other women who feel hopeless. You're
Yes.
you're lighting them up. You're pouring into them. That's not an accident. So it's all connecting. It's all the pieces of the plan that God laid out over a series of decades. And it's still growing. You're not at the finish line yet. It's still building. It's
Oh yeah.
there's still it's still in rolling in motion. So I love your story, and I love to have these moments because it really gives you a true understanding, a closer look, a closer glimpse of just how God moves in again what the world would see as a hopeless, endless, you know, you're just supposed to just fall apart to pieces and just lose your mind and go crazy. But when you look at it through the godly lenses, the ending, kind of tell on our age again. We think about, you talked about CDs earlier. You think about when DVDs were popular and they used to have some that had
Yeah.
the alternate endings. This is your DVD with the alternate ending. There was the worldly ending where you were supposed to crash out, maybe fall victim to substance abuse or more reckless relationships and life of turmoil. That was the worldly ending, but the alternate ending that God had for you painted a completely different picture, a completely different outcome. It puts the smile on your face that you have right now as we're sitting here on the show. You wouldn't have been able to have that same smile had you followed the script of the worldly ending. That wouldn't have put a smile on your face. You might have not even been here to talk to me. We may have never met. That backdrop that I'm seeing behind you may have never existed had we relied upon the worldly ending to the movie, the
Mhm.
worldly ending to my story. No, God has a different map for that. He has an alternate ending, and so that's a powerful thing that you're sharing here. And that's, again, this is why such stories like this are so important to tell. And I hope for our listeners that tune in, that they're understanding and appreciating, what this means. That it's more than just us telling a story, but there's layers to this that we really want you to embrace and understand. So know, if you don't already know what the true meaning of what it means to be in relationship with God and how that impacts everything that you're going through, and how you navigate it accordingly. So, again, I appreciate you sharing what you have up to this point. So, um, Althea, obviously we've talked about some very heavy stuff, molestation, losing a spouse, you know, um, relationships that don't necessarily reflect a way that you necessarily are always proud of when you think about certain things that happened or you went through or whatever. But just like storms can be, have major impacts of things like that happen in our lives. Sometimes the storms are just day to day nuances that we deal with, just lifing type stuff. And so, with that said, if you would share with us, what is it that you personally like to do when you find yourself having one of those days where something's going on, it's a storm that you're dealing with, a challenge that you're dealing with. What is it that you like to do to kind of helps you to process through whatever that moment is and do it in a healthy and productive way that makes you be able to work through it with clarity and focus, and having
Yeah.
that peace that you need to have when you're dealing in difficult times?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is gonna be different for specifically, when it comes to, people my age, is that I like to play video games. I'm old school as far as, like, 80s, games like Pac-Man and Zelda and all of that, so I have an Xbox, I have a Wii, I mean, our my family is, like, we're gamers. So, that's at least one of the things that I do is because it's all about the hands, moving hands and the eye coordination and all of that kind of stuff. One of the other things that I do also, of course, like I said, I have a love for music, and sometimes it's just a matter of just listening to music. It can be praise and worship. It could be Old school 80s, 'cause, I'm a 80s child, so I love all the old school hip hop and everything. Sorry, I don't like a lot of the music they have now because it's just horrible. So, it the reminiscing on all the good times and things of that sort, and, I also love connecting with other people, like-minded, so I love to fellowship with, my fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, just talking about God's word and everything, our experiences, exchanging, war wounds and things of that sort as well. But just the main thing also being connecting with God, just having conversations with God. If it was not for the fact that we have Bluetooth and everything in our cars and speakers in our cars, people would probably think I was crazy because I have conversations, like ongoing conversations with God, because He has been the uh, everything for me, everything. He has been like my friend, my counselor, my financer, everything, and helping me to be able to sort out my thoughts. And so when I feel overwhelmed, when I feel like, God, I don't know which direction to go, I don't know what this looks like, I'm having these conversations with him, but then there is a moment in time that I have to stop and allow myself to just be still and in the silence. And sometimes for people that's hard to do because you feel like you got to do something, but you don't have to. If we're doing all of the talking, if we're doing all of the things and trying to look for all of the signs and wonders as far as what you're wanting God to do, or what's the next thing that God wants you to do, you're trying to figure it out and you're steady doing all the talking, how is he going to be able to speak to you?
Mm.
And so there are times where you have to just be still and know that he is God. And so sometimes it can be very uncomfortable because it's like you're there and you're just waiting, but that is the best time for you to really connect with God. And so that is one of the main things that I do is there are times where I just everything is shut down. I have nothing on, and I'm just sitting still and listening for that still small voice of God.
I think that's very well said. I love the fact that for one, when you talk about what I do to kind of deal with the challenging times, that you have something that's just lighthearted, that's just fun. In your case, the video games. There's, a lot of times people when they're going through, especially when they are going through and they hear they're listening to someone who is has you know one of faith and Christian beliefs and such, that they think that it has to be this whole you know, you know, larger than life holy moment where where we're just and all of that, and it's just
Yeah.
you can deal sometimes the best way to deal with the stresses of life is to just find something that you enjoy doing to just kind of calm you, to just kind of bring you down a couple of notches so that you can now be in a place and a point where you can not only have an intelligent conversation with God about what is it that's on your heart, what's on your mind, but to what you said, also understanding the value of just being okay with sitting still, because I can't hear from him. I can't get his guidance. I can't get his direction if I'm just talking, 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 or if I've allowed my emotions to just be all over the place and I haven't done anything to just kind of. And when I say do something that calms you down, of course, I'm speaking something that is productive and healthy. We don't want to do things to calm us down that could be dangerous to us, or or something that even if we partake in, and that's not me trying to knock somebody who likes to have a little sip of something to calm down or whatever, but partaking in something that if you overindulge because of the moment that you're in, the moment of frustration and overwhelming that you're in, you might take something that you go into that situation thinking I'm just going to have a little something to calm down, and you may exacerbate the situation. You may make it even worse because of just the choice that you made to use to calm you down instead of understanding again the peace that God provides in calming you down. So I love the video game part, calm me down. I love the music to calm me down, whatever it takes to settle you, to get your mind right. And I love the fact that you point out basically highlighting the importance of having a circle of people, in this case, your brothers and sisters in Christ that you can reach out to and call upon and say, to just, whether it's just having general conversation just to get your mind off of things, or just, like you said, to just kind of share some of your war stories. I done had a day today, sister such and such, or brother such. Look at, pray for me. I'm
Yeah.
processing. I'm dealing with this, and having people that you can have in that circle that are not there to judge you, not there to ridicule you, but to give you that safe space to be able to just release, just be able to just dump it out, and they can pray for you, they can hug you up, they can let you know, give you them words of encouragement. You're gonna be okay. You've been to tough times before, tougher times before. It's gonna be all right. Let's just hang out. Let's, like you said, in the end, that final piece is just when it's just you and God, where you said, I like to, basically, I like to meditate on His Word. I like to just kind of have that moment of conversation with Him, and it's in all of those connecting pieces that you're able to, again, to find that peace in what may otherwise be a stressful moment, a stressful day, but also to get the guidance that you need on, okay, how do I move forward from here so that tomorrow or the next day or the rest of the week I'm not, you know, weighed down by
Mhm.
whatever it is that I've come across this week with, and again, it could be a variety of stuff that's going on, but nevertheless, the pathway that you choose to get that peace and to get that insight that you need to move forward is critical. That those choices matter. So
Yeah.
I love your approach on that. So with that said, out there, if you had the chance to sit across the table from the younger Althea, the Althea who, who's been through some stuff. Good person, clearly, loving person. Looking, tries to find the best in people, but not necessarily always been reciprocated with the same in return. Um, if you could speak to her and impart some words of wisdom, some guidance, some things that you think that she would have benefited from, had she known what you know today, as well as to our listeners that are tuning in, that they may be currently dealing with some of the things that we've talked about tonight, that you've gone through, challenges that you've had, looking for love in all the wrong places, just relationships that didn't, like I said, reciprocate the same way that you poured into, and things of that nature, or just somebody who's lost a loved one, dealing with that, and how do I bounce back? How do I start my next chapter after going through such a devastating moment like that, especially when it was a loving, marriage. How do I start over, so to speak? What would you say to those listeners? What would you say to the younger Althea?
Yeah. So I would say use your voice. Use your voice. I believe that if I had let my mother know what had taken place to me, that for me, it would have changed a lot of things. I could have received help. I could have went to therapy. I could have been able to just because I know that with children become resilient or can be resilient when you have a loving mother and father that is able to help you get through trauma that you may have experienced as a child. But I kept silent, unfortunately. So I would have to tell my younger self, use your voice, open your mouth, allow people to know what happened to you. And then going forward, allow people to find help you to get help for yourself. Counseling is not a bad thing. Life coaches are not a bad thing. I'm a mental health coach, and I chose to be a mental health coach because I didn't want to be restricted on the things that I would want to talk about, in particular, using God's word, because that's the thing that really helps us to heal and go forward. And so you have to be comfortable with opening up and sharing with someone because that's a freedom. That's we talked about vulnerability earlier. Being able to be vulnerable and saying to someone, "This happened to me. I don't know what to do with it, but this person did this to me." It's freedom. Because if you don't share, you're just walking around with all of this baggage that eventually you're going to be you'll try to get into a relationship. That person probably has a bunch of baggage, and now you got a bunch of junk everywhere and trying to have a relationship with someone, and that's more than likely not going to last very long. You need to talk to someone. You need to use your voice. That's one of the things that I've always expressed and shared with anyone. Use your voice. Share your story because your story is not just your story. Your story is also for someone else that will give them the ability to be able to be set free as well. And so I am truly thankful and grateful that I'm now able to use my voice and share my story with others because it gives me the ability to let them know that, yeah, I was messed up, tore up from the floor up, but now God has brought me here. And now I want to help you to overcome those obstacles that you have experienced in life as well, because those chapters are just temporary. Those things were that you went through were temporary, but God has a better plan. God has a master plan for you. And it was predestined before you even went through all of this. He knows everything about you and he wants you to be victorious.
Well, that's again very well said. I think that is very solid advice to any of our listeners that are tuning in. You know, if you're looking for those first steps to take, use, like you say, use your voice. Don't allow your pride, don't allow worrying about what other people are going to think or going to say to cause you to hold in something that needs to come out. And like you said, you know, I love that you pointed out about therapy. Because we all know, if you know, particularly us as a people, we have historically been anti therapy because that's supposed to be something that's only for crazy people and all that kind of stuff. But it's one of those things that, you know, don't knock it till you try it. And it took me many years to even give that a chance. And it's even more important, which I love that in your particular case that you were mindful of, is that you chose a profession where it allowed you to not only pour into people, but to do so without the boundaries of being able to talk about God. Because I understand, you know, that in some circles, you know, that's taboo. You can't talk about God as you're pouring into. But when you're a believer, you understand, well, you can't talk about healing and you telling me I got to leave God out of that, because that's not giving them the complete medicine, if you will, the complete story, the complete processes they need to go through. So I'm glad that you navigated a space like that to be able to pour into others. And then I would say to my listeners, if you're seeking someone for that kind of guidance, mental health guidance, you know, you should be selective and look for people who have that backdrop, that background, so that you do get the full scope of what you need to hear and what you need to be exposed to as to how you navigate problems. That's no disrespect or knock to those who operate without speaking about God. But again, if you want to level that thing up, if you want to take it to a whole nother focus and perspective, getting the full scope of what it truly means to be healed, what it truly means to overcome a difficult time, and to not just put a band-aid on it, but to make it not only but to make it go away from you, getting up out of you, but also using that same experience as an opportunity, as the case with you, Althea, being able to pour it into other people. You won't get
Yeah.
that unless you make the right connections to people who understand the true source of healing, who understands how to look at the whatever that story moment is from you and seeing it again through godly lenses. That is such a critical thing. So I'm glad you're pointing that out. And again, very solid advice. And I pray that our listeners who are trying to look for that first step, who are struggling in their particular storm, that you could, that there's some nuggets here that you can draw from, because Althea's dropped plenty for you to choose from, to just to begin that platform, to begin that process, to take those next steps to healing. So appreciate that. Um, Althea, this has been a phenomenal time talking to you, hearing your story. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. You have definitely exceeded expectations as far as what you've shared this evening, blessing me, blessing my listeners, and I'm so thankful for that, and I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to connect, so that this opportunity was even possible. This has definitely been some very powerful stuff, meaningful conversations that need to be had, but ultimately acknowledging God's presence, God's role in it all, in being able to inspire our listeners this evening and give them some hope, give them some encouragement that you too can overcome your storms and navigate those challenging situations. It's not insurmountable. It's not impossible to get up out of, but also understanding that there's a purpose in all that you're going through. And once you truly understand that, it makes a whole world of difference as to how you look at it and how you pivot moving forward. So again, I appreciate you and all that you're doing, in the purpose that God has specifically designed just for you. So thank you so much for that. But before I let you go, as is customary here on the Blessings in the Streets podcast, we do want to take an opportunity to celebrate you, to love on you, to lift you up. So if you got anything that's going on now or coming up down the road, we want to know all about it, how people can support it, be a part of it, continue to follow you along and experience the great works that God has placed in you and all that you're doing. So out there, you need to tell us what do we need to be connected with and know about so we can continue to follow along with you. If nothing more, just to continue to keep you lifted up in
Amen.
prayer with everything that you're doing. So what you got going on that we need to know about?
Yeah, so I earlier, like I said, I started a radio show. It is called WOVE Inspiration Radio. Started it back in July because of my heart and soul of music, all things gospel. In particular, focusing on the independent artists that some of them have a little bit of challenges trying to get their music out, and so that is one of the things that I do is I feature a lot of our independent gospel artists on the radio station. And it is on Live 365 and also tune in. So if you're wanting to listen to the radio station, the name of the radio station again is WOVE, which stands for Women of Vision and Excellence. That's WOVE, Inspiration Radio. I am also on a lot of social media platforms. So TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. I think I have 3 pages on Facebook, and they all are Wove Inspiration. So you won't have a hard time finding me. You just if you even Google Wove, WOVE, inspiration, all of the things that I do will be found on via Google. And I also have a website, which is the same WOVE I love to connect with people, I love to network with people. I also like to help people. So if you're looking to have a conversation about any of the things that I might have shared earlier today, please reach out to me. You can email me at WOVE inspiration at gmail.com.
Awesome, awesome. Well, listeners, she's giving you all the contact information. She's doing some phenomenal, exciting things. Definitely get connected. Tune in to her radio broadcast. Again, aspiring artists out there trying to get on. You see what she's doing, and if you're God led and doing some powerful things, connect with her. She's clearly got a heart of giving, a heart of concern and love and caring for other people. So you can't go wrong connecting with Althea, and I know I haven't gone wrong with connecting with her this evening. So please do support her. Please follow along her respective social media platforms and just be out there to support. And like I said, if nothing more, keep her in your prayers because she is truly called by God to do a powerful work. And it's not an easy position to walk in purpose and to keep encouraged and stay strong. There's a lot of obstacles. There's a lot of opposition. Everybody doesn't always wish you well, even when you're doing such a phenomenal work that you're doing. But again, we know who's in charge at the end of the day, and at the end of the day, he has the final say. as to how it's going to all play out. So again, we appreciate your support and all that she's doing, and I want to personally, let you know that I'll be keeping you in my prayers, and I'm excited to hear more about the things that are going to be coming along the pipe down in what you're doing and everything, and know that you're always welcome to come back on the show in the future should you choose to do so. Again, this has been a great time, and I'm grateful and appreciative that you've been a part of this experience with me. And for my listeners, if you've enjoyed our broadcast this evening, please do subscribe, share, like, comment, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is about. We want to inspire, encourage, uplift, just being raw, being real, keeping it 100, being transparent and vulnerable, sharing a bit of our journey, a bit of our story, letting you know that hey, we all go through some stuff. We all are dealing with our storms. It's not always easy. Sometimes you feel like you're all by yourself in it all, but trust and believe there's a God out here who loves you unconditionally, wants nothing but the best for you. He desires for you to just lean on him and trust in him and just allow him to just work out miraculous things in your life. And if you don't currently have a relationship with him, I'm here to tell you that tonight is a mighty fine day for you to choose to make that decision. I promise you it'll be the best decision that you will ever make if you have not already done so. So don't miss out on this opportunity. Again, he has plenty of love to go around for everybody. We're not telling you something that we heard. We're telling you something that we know from firsthand personal experience. And so, just like it's been game changing, life changing for us, we want that to be the same for you. So, again, we plead to you, definitely get a hold of him, embrace him, and never let go, and just watch him do just awesome and wonderful things in your life. So remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is a place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and I thank you so much again for tuning in. And until next time, keep fighting that good fight, keep leaning on God, trusting in Him. Know that God has the plan for you. And all you have to do is allow yourself to be open to receive what He has for you. Not only will He be able to bestow blessings upon you, but He will permit an abundance of blessings to be within you to share with other people as well. So until next time, you take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you again. Have a great rest of your evening.